Hello and welcome to Filling the Sink, a podcast from Catalan News. My name's Lorcan Doherty and today we're talking about high-speed rail. Spain is home to the longest high-speed rail network in Europe and the second longest in the world after China. Catalonia's network, centred on Barcelona, extends to Madrid, north to France, but not that far south along the Mediterranean coast. A recent shake-up liberalising the high-speed network has had some big knock-on effects. Coming up, Cristina Tomàs White takes a trip to Paris from Barcelona, a route previously jointly operated by the Spanish and French state-owned railway companies before the recent split. Plus, we'll be hearing from a startup looking to bring night trains to Europe and a group lobbying for better public transport. And considering air travel's contribution to the climate emergency, is high-speed rail travel a realistic alternative for journeys between Catalonia and the rest of Europe? I'm joined for today's podcast by Guifré Jordan. Hi, Guifré.
Hi, Lorcan. How's it going?
Going very well, thank you. So we're talking about high-speed rail in Catalonia. Do you want to give us a little overview of the network here?
Absolutely, yeah. It all started back in 2008. That means 15 years ago when the route between Madrid and Barcelona was launched after many years of works. We're talking about 620 kilometers covered in 2 hours and 30 minutes if there's no stops. Some trains don't stop in any other station, and those who stop take around 3 hours, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible speeds. 310 kilometres an hour, the AVE train. AVE is, of course, the name of the high-speed network in Spain. And Barcelona-Madrid is the busiest route on that.
And you can check the amount of trains going from Barcelona to Madrid. So in a normal day, you get 41 in each direction. So that is amazing. It's very clear that we are talking about the most successful high-speed rail route in Spain with 38 million passengers from 2008 to 2021.
So it peaked in 2019 at 4.3 million passengers in a single year. Obviously, it's dropped a little bit with the pandemic and it's coming back. Beyond Barcelona, then within Catalonia, there are 4 other stations on the high-speed network.
Absolutely, yeah. And they cover the same route, basically. So you can go from any station in Catalonia to Madrid, for instance. Beginning from the north, we've got Figueras. Then a little bit down, we find Girona station, then Barcelona, then Tarragona, and then Lleida. I just wanted to very quickly mention about the Tarragona one, that there was loads of controversy surrounding this station when it was created, because it's actually not in Tarragona. It's in Camp de Tarragona. It's somewhere between Reus and Tarragona, 25 minutes away from Tarragona by car, meaning that it's very different from the others. Most of the other stations are in the center or very close to the city center.
It's one of the beauties of rail travel is, you get out and you're in the city and you're ready to explore. Like, for example, Girona is 37 minutes from Barcelona. It takes me longer to get to work.
That's the point.
I could be in Girona and walking around the streets.
But of course, you've got to remember that Tarragona has a very vast Roman heritage. It's not that easy to get a train in Tarragona above the ground or under the ground. It's not that easy. There's loads of archaeological sites and Roman heritage there. So they decided this, but it was very controversial.
And then beyond Catalonia, the route extends outwards.
So yeah, especially from Barcelona and sometimes from the other stations, you can go directly without any change to cities such as Zaragoza, for instance, in the Aragon region, neighboring Catalonia, to Madrid, and even to Seville. Actually, there's some trains that go directly to Seville. Most of them need a change in Madrid, but some go directly to Seville.
And what about, I said earlier on about, along the Mediterranean coast, maybe the connection isn't quite as good. We've got Valencia, which is the third biggest city in Spain. What about the connection there?
Yeah, it's good that you bring this up because this is by far the most important thing to work on in the Spanish high-speed train network. There's no direct connection from Barcelona to Valencia, although they are quite close, with high-speed trains. So you can obviously go by train, but it's not so high-speed trains, let's say. And it gets a little bit ridiculous because Valencia is just 350 kilometers away from Barcelona, and you get trains that cover this distance in 2 hours and 47 minutes. But Barcelona-Madrid trains, we said before, 2 hours and 30. And Barcelona-Madrid is 620 kilometers. And if you want to go to Valencia in high-speed trains, you have to go through Madrid.
Yeah.
Which
So
doesn't
that's
make
the
sense.
criticism, that the whole network is centred on Madrid to the detriment maybe of some other routes covering big areas of population.
Exactly. For decades, there's been this controversy that all the Spanish governments in charge of this network have been very centralists, with Madrid being the center, let's say. So there's this concept of La España Radial, the radial Spain. I don't know how, if it's understood in English.
It's like a hub and spoke system, you would say in English.
Absolutely. Okay, yeah. So that means that, for instance, routes like the Mediterranean corridor is not covered yet. But it's work in progress, so it's supposed to be finished at some point. But yeah.
And what about, obviously, Barcelona is very close to France. What about the connection there and then beyond to the rest of Europe?
Yeah, back in 2010, there was some milestone for train engineering with this tunnel that was built between the administrative borders of Spain and France.
Under the Pyrenees?
Under the Pyrenees, exactly. That's what it is. And that enabled a high-speed connection between Barcelona and Paris in 2013. So it's for 10 years, we've been connected with Paris in 6.5 hours. That's something game-changing.
And that has been operated jointly by Renfe and SNCF, the Spanish and French state-owned railway operators. But now SNCF are operating this route on their own. And as it launched, Guifré, they got in touch with us to see if we wanted to go along.
Exactly, yeah. One of the first journeys from Barcelona to Paris. It was a journalist school trip. We got lucky to get one invitation. And Cristina was the lucky one. There were some fights in the newsroom there. But in the end, Cristina prevailed.
Cristina. Okay, well, let's take a listen to Cristina's report.
We've just left Barcelona on the first, technically not the first, but one of the first SNCF trains to Paris without Renfe in 9 years. I'm here with a group of journalists from Barcelona and some from Madrid who've been invited to cover the event by SNCF. Jean-Michel, the train driver, welcomes us aboard. This TGV Inuit train, he tells us, will be going 200 kilometers an hour until Figueras, the last stop before France, before slowing down until Nîmes, where it'll pick up the speed again to 300 kilometers an hour all the way to Paris Gare de Lyon. All in all, the trip is supposed to take a bit over 6 hours and 45 minutes.
L'évolution globale du secteur ferroviaire.
SNCF representatives are quick to jump into a series of presentations telling us about their vision for the future, an eco-friendly travel option for 800,000 passengers annually aboard 2 trains in each direction every day, 3 in the summer, and their reasons for ending things with Renfe, as well as the cross-border connections with Marseille and Lyon. They've lost around 10 million annually on these lines, they explain. And they say it's also been hard to cooperate with Renfe while also competing with them ever since SNCF launched the low-cost Ouigo service between Barcelona and Madrid. It's hard to take in the scenery during the presentations, which only allow us a brief but loud pause as we go through the Pertús tunnel. It was built under the Pyrenees, making the cross-border high-speed route possible since late 2013. We're soon rushing past the lagoons between Perpignan and Narbonne, and at some points it almost looks like we're floating because there's water on both sides of the train. It's absolutely breathtaking. Well, I'm in Montpellier at the moment. We've been here for the past 10, 15 minutes. I've kind of lost track of time. It was only supposed to be a quick stop, but from what I've been able to gather, they are having some sort of technical issue with the train. And here we are. C'est la vie. We end up leaving Montpellier 47 minutes later than expected, but at least we've been offered cheese and wine that made the wait a lot easier. I get up to explore the train with Miquel, a colleague from ACN. It's a double-decker that looks pretty full. Most passengers seem to be speaking French, making me wonder how many of them hopped on the other side of the border. So we're about an hour away from Paris, which means we are not making the press conference that we were supposed to be at right now. We're still out in the middle of nowhere. Looking out the window, it looks very, very cold. very frosty.
Please make sure you take all your belongings with you.
It's the sound of suitcases making their way down the platform at Gare de Lyon in Paris. The last hour or so was kind of stressful there. Internet was just not working. And of course, me and my other colleague from ACN were the last ones off the train. But we're in Paris. We are being handed gifts. So, nice, pleasant surprise. We are quickly whisked off to dinner at the luxurious Intercontinental Hotel, where we're greeted by the SNCF officials who were supposed to be at the press conference we missed. Alain Krakovich, who's in charge of TGV Intercités high-speed trains within France, tells us he worries there's what he calls SNCF bashing in Spain, which I find somewhat amusing. He clearly hasn't heard a Catalan talk about Renfe. The dinner and the speeches go on for a while. I learn about the complexities of launching the Barcelona-Paris line without Renfe, including getting French train drivers licensed in Spain since there's not an EU-wide system yet. A few hours later, we're finally able to call it a day. The next morning at breakfast, we meet with Jean-Baptiste Guénon, the head of SNCF Voyage Europe. To the disappointment of many a train enthusiast, he tells us they don't plan on having sleeper trains between Barcelona and Paris anytime soon, nor do they have plans to start up the Marseille and Lyon connections again either. It's too, quote, costly. And after a tour of TGV high-speed operations center at Gare de Lyon and a quick lunch, it's soon time to leave. We're somewhere in the middle of France, not too sure where, south of Paris, and just looking out the window, it's beautiful outside. It's snowed, not too heavily, but there's a light coat of snow over the fields, which is something I haven't seen in a while in Barcelona. We're stopped in Montpellier again, this time on the way back. Apparently there is a cargo train that's had some sort of issue that's on the line ahead of us, and that's why we cannot move. The train is over 2 hours late. We've been given snacks and we're told passengers are entitled to a refund, but at this point all anyone wants is for the journey to end. The last few stops in France feel eternal. That's not entirely inaccurate, since the train can't run as fast on this part of the line. We stop in Sète, Agde, Béziers, Narbonne, Perpignan, and then Figueras before picking up speed again to Girona, and then finally Barcelona. Exhausted is an understatement. The trip's taken us almost 9 hours.
De Barcelone à Sants, le terminus de notre TGV. Avant de descendre, assurez-vous de n'avoir rien oublié.
Well, not exactly all plain sailing there. Maybe a few early teething problems as SNCF kind of manage that route on their own, perhaps. Cristina mentioned that the routes from Barcelona to Lyon and Marseille are no longer running, but they might be making a return.
Yes, Renfe has just been given permission to run trains solo, let's say, in France. And they said that they aim to get the Barcelona-Lyon and Barcelona-Marseille services back before summer.
This summer? Okay, so that's something to watch out for.
Exactly. No one has talked about Toulouse, though. We had trains from Barcelona to Toulouse direct too before the pandemic. This was discontinued during the pandemic or halted during the pandemic, and neither of the two companies have announced any return of this line.
Cristina also mentioned Ouigo, which is SNCF's low-cost brand, as one of the reasons behind the split between Spain's Renfe and France's SNCF. It's part of the whole liberalisation of the high-speed network in Spain, which is kind of mixing things up, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because now we no longer have only Avis. We have two other companies, Ouigo, this French one, as you mentioned, and Iryo, which is Italian. So you've got quite a wide offer, and obviously the impact for passengers is clear. More trains and cheaper, actually. Some offers even lower the prices to 10 euros or even less than that. So that's amazing. You've got to watch out for offers and always buy in advance. If you buy like months in advance, you can go from Barcelona to Madrid for 10 euros.
Yeah, so Irio just joined the party there in November. But, you know, if I've seen the striking kind of red livery of their trains here in Barcelona Stand Station, you can't miss them. Now, for destinations further afield, one of the most comfortable ways to travel maybe is by night trains. Guifré, you've been looking a little bit this week about the current situation in night trains, because we've heard all sorts of rumours and stories kind of come every few years about, is Barcelona get night trains to this destination or that? So what's the current situation?
Well, we have to say that some train fans dream of the Orient Express of 21st century. This is something that a lot of people dream about, but we don't have great news about it, unfortunately. So there is some initiative of night trains in Europe called Nightjet. That's the main one. It's some state train companies joining forces to create cross-border routes at night.
It's mainly based in Central and Eastern Europe, isn't it?
Yes, the Swiss and the Austrian state companies are the ones promoting it. They are the ones that should do it because they're in the center of the continent, so that's maybe easier. And these guys announced some route from Zurich to Barcelona in late 2024. Everyone got excited and so on. This happened in 2020, but we haven't heard anything else about it. I called them this week and they said that this project has been put on hold, actually. So they don't rule it out, but they don't have date anymore. And they argue financial issues, like problems to get funding to make it work.
Right, okay. Well, Cristina already mentioned earlier that the French operator SNCF isn't planning on introducing night trains to Barcelona yet.
And I've talked to Renfe too. They had this Tren Hotels. That's something very old that they used to have, no longer. And they are not planning on any return of these night trains.
Okay,
either.
But all is not lost. You did speak to someone who is intent on bringing night trains to Catalonia, and pretty soon.
Yes, I talked to Romain Payet. He's the co-founder of a startup called Midnight Trains.
Okay, and you also caught up this week with the head of the Association of the Promotion of Public Transport here in Catalonia, Adrià Ramirez. Let's take a listen.
High-speed lines tend to work really, really well up to 4 hours, quite well up to 6 hours. And then night trains work well up to 12 hours or 14 hours.
This is Adrià Ramirez, president of PTP Group, lobbying for more public transport. He thinks that taking this into account, overnight journeys to Rome, Milan and Zurich should be possible. And there would definitely be customers, he says.
It's people wanting to travel to Paris in 6 hours, and other people that might want, or the same people at different time might want to travel to Paris in 10 hours, but sleeping on the train. For example, we know one person that used to go to a university in Paris, and when she came, she could use the train. And you can arrive to Paris at 8 a.m. and go to university already, or go to work or whatever.
He regrets the introduction of high-speed trains, meaning the end of night trains, and disagrees with Spanish and French companies, saying the fastest services already cover the needs of former overnight travelers. Midnight Trains, an ambitious startup, agrees with him, as they are planning to offer night services, as co-founder Romain Payet explains.
Most probably the first line will be from Paris to Milan and Venice. Then we want to expand by launching one new line per year, and Barcelona is definitely within the next 2 months.
The first trains from Paris to Barcelona, with one daily service each way, may run in 2026 or 2027, and they want to connect Catalonia with Milan, Florence and Rome in the longer run. Yet, if the project ends up coming to life, prices may not be lower than 150 euros one way. Both PTP and Midnight Trains agree that planning cross-border routes is a nightmare.
Europe is definitely not Europe when we talk about railway. Each country has its own technical requirements, legislation, distribution system.
It feels like the European institutions are trying to create with trains, with railway infrastructure, what we have achieved with many other topics, but we are not yet there.
Our thanks to Romain Payet and Adrià Ramirez. Adrià there talking about night trains, but there are a few other things he would like to see improved with the network as well, Guifré.
Yeah, absolutely. His main complaint is the Mediterranean corridor not being finished. So that's something that we mentioned. So this is something key that he thinks should be sorted anytime soon. And he even says that authorities should also look into trains not only to France, but maybe also to Italy. That's not that far away and should be possible. But as we heard in this report, cross-border trains are very difficult also for, paperwork, regulations, different requirements by national governments. So it's a bit of a mess.
A bit tricky. But is it the way forward? Because we hear more and more about the climate emergency. It's affecting us here in Catalonia. I've done several podcasts on it. And of course, when it comes to planes versus trains are obviously much more eco-friendly and stuff. And so there's so many short-haul flights. Maybe this is the way forward. We need more cross-border trains. I mean, in terms of my own high-speed rail experience, I took the train from, to Madrid and back from Barcelona. And, I have to say, it's a really just comfortable experience. You fly by so quickly, you arrive in the city centre, you can get up and walk around, and you've got more space. And with all the competition that we talked about earlier as well, you can get cheap tickets too. So, I mean, flights between Barcelona and Madrid, for example, Guifré, have come way down since this high-speed rail link opened.
Yes, because a lot of people think the same as you and me. It's so comfortable to travel by train. It's not like commuter trains in which it's packed and full of people standing. There's no people standing whatsoever. That's important. So you've got to be careful also with that, because it's a limited offer. Whenever all the seats are sold out, there's no more space.
When they're gone, they're gone.
You can't just push on, it's just seats. So before 2008, when the high-speed train connection started, we had 5 million passengers from Barcelona to Madrid by flight per year. And just before the pandemic in 2019, this figure lowered to 2.4 million, half of it, basically.
Yeah. Okay, so it shows you if you put the infrastructure in place, you put the connections in place, then people will make that choice.
Absolutely.
SNCF told us that there are 8 flights for every train between Barcelona and Paris. So maybe that's something that gradually will change over time.
Yeah, maybe this is a reality in the future. What is clear is in the future, these high-speed trains will go on the rise probably, because Barcelona is building a massive hub, public transport hub in La Sagrera. And the main aim of this hub is to have more capacity for high-speed trains, because Sand Station is getting small
now. If you come through it on the commuter trains, you'll often have a wait just before coming in. So, yeah.
There's only 6 tracks for high-speed trains, and now there are 3 companies. It is getting complicated, more complicated to handle.
Time now for our Catalan phrase. What's it this week, Guifré?
Deixar algú amb la mel a la boca.
Leave someone with honey on their mouth.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So I would guess that it means leave someone feeling sweet, no, happy? No.
On the contrary, because if the honey is in the mouth, it's not in your
stomach.
Not in
your tummy, right? Okay.
It didn't reach. So that's what this Night Jet initiative probably left all train fans in Barcelona. They said they would do Zurich to Barcelona at night, but it didn't happen in the end. So we are all being left with honey in the mouth, but we weren't able to swallow them.
Deixar algú amb la mel a la boca. Well, thanks very much for joining me today, Guifré.
A pleasure, Lorcan.
Our thanks to Cristina as well for her report from the trip to Paris. Thanks to SNCF, thanks to Romain Payet and to Adrià Ramirez as well. Most importantly, thanks to you for listening. We're back again next week with another episode of Filling the Sink. Until then, from me, Lorcan Doherty, and all of us here at Catalan News, bye for now, adeu, and if you're getting the train, bon viatge.